My name is Peter Davos, and I'm going to share my experiences with you today in regards to my education, Odyssey. Odyssey is a word that we often hear, but most of us don't really know the actual definition of it. It means a long wandering or voyage, usually marked by many changes of fortune. The word Odyssey comes from the epic poem written by Homer. It was the sequel to the Iliad, and it details the chronicles of Odysseus. Odysseus was a Greek general. You may know him as the originator of the Trojan horse. He was very intelligent. He's the one that helped win the war against the Trojans for the Greeks. And at the end of the war, he just wanted to go home to his island home of Ithaca, which you see here at the last destination. It took him 10 years to make it there. So quite a few unexpected twists and turns and stops in between. This shows you the map of his voyage. It should have been a relatively quick and easy one, but it took him over a decade to get there. He never gave up. It was quite an interesting voyage, and it's made for the stuff of legend, a story that we tell to this day. My education odyssey did not start in Troy. It actually started in a small city called Brockton, Massachusetts. You probably have never heard of it. It's about half an hour south of Boston. It's famously known as the City of Champions, and its claim to fame is 2 world champion boxers. So Rocky Marciano, who's the only undefeated heavyweight boxing champion in history, came from Brockton, as did marvelous Marvin Hagler. So if are there any boxing fans out there, you may know these two, otherwise you probably wouldn't. Brockton was a working class city, definitely not affluent by any means. It was where I called home for the first 16 years of my life, and where my educational odyssey began. Of course, I was born in a city famous for its fighters, but also that's where it gave me my start in education. I was very fortunate to go to a public school in Brockton where all the teachers, believe it or not, had master's degree in education. In Massachusetts, the state where I'm from, that's home to Boston, that's home to Harvard, that's home to MIT, it's actually state law that teachers must have a master's degree in education in order to teach in a public school. So from a very early age, I was encouraged to learn. I felt that I got a good amount of attention in the classroom, and I also started to develop a love for reading through comic books, believe it or not. So for as long as I can remember, I used to buy every X-Men, every X-Force, every Marvel comic book there was, and I used to just save all the money from the driveways I used to shovel for snow, the paper route that I ran, and buy comic books. Little did I know, I was planting the seeds for my love of reading and my love of learning that would follow me to this very day. I also very active in Greek school. Both my parents were immigrants from Greece, and every day after regular school I would go to Greek school. So that's where I would learn Greek, I would learn about history, culture, and that's where another seed was planted. Another part of my journey was a journey of self-discovery, but a journey into history, a journey into foreign cultures that started very early on. So that's where the seeds were planted, and then I was led to Thayer Academy, a very elite private school that was 150 years old, steeped in tradition, steeped in excellence, steeped with a very rich history of sending graduates to top universities. I thought that there I would get all the support that I would need to go to a top university. And I did get a lot of support. I did find teachers that were interested in me. I did find teachers that supported me. But I also, for the first time ever, didn't find it very easy to get A's without trying very hard. I was a decent student, I was a good student, but by no means was I the best student in the class. And really, it was a matter of environment and a matter of support. I continued to develop my love of reading outside the classroom. I discovered Michael Crichton through Jurassic Park. I'm sure some of you have seen the movie, or most of you have seen the movie. But I read Jurassic Park, the book, and then I went on to read all of his novels. So this seed started to grow. When I was at school, one of the things I remember most, one of the most memorable parts of my experiences was actually being insulted by teachers, believe it or not. It happened on 2 separate occasions where the first time I asked a question in class. It was a very simple question. It was an English class. The teacher's name was Miss Bailey. I'll always remember her. And she responded to me I asked the question, she gave me the answer, and I said, "Oh, thank you, Mrs. Bailey, now I understand." And she said in front of the whole class, "Well, Davos, if you understand, then I must be doing a fantastic job if you finally understood it." So I thought that was interesting, and that's something that always stuck with me. Another very memorable experience that I had when I was a junior in high school, at the beginning of my junior year, is I went to my college counselor and I asked him about universities. Where should I go? Where did he see me? Back then we didn't have internet, believe it or not. He had a very big book of colleges. He opened it up and he told me about some liberal arts schools up in Maine and New Hampshire, Bates and Bowdoin, and places I had never really heard about, but not only that, places that I thought really weren't right for me. So then I decided to take matters into my own hands and said, I'm going to be in charge of my own destiny. So how did I do that? Well, one of the first things I did was I did my research. I discovered that Harvard had a secondary school program for high school students. I applied, and to my surprise, I enrolled. I took classes at Harvard as a high school student after school. I used to take the subway there. It took about half an hour to get there. I really enjoyed what I studied. I studied history. I studied classics. I did really well. I got A's in my courses. I was doing university-level coursework as a high school junior and as a high school senior. And I felt really excited for the first time. I made great relationships with my professors. They believed in me. They supported me. Their work was absolutely incredible. My parents supported me in telling me that I could study whatever I want, and I thought I pretty much had it all figured out. I applied to Harvard expecting to get in, and guess what happened? I didn't. I was rejected, just like 96% of applicants are. Initially, I thought this was a huge blow. I learned a very valuable lesson that day, though, and that lesson was you have to always be adaptable. You cannot judge success or failure by entrance just to one school or another, but by the journey itself. Luckily, the best thing happened to me after being rejected from Harvard. I was accepted to Johns Hopkins, a university that subsequently helped create the person I am today. That's where I made my best friends. It was an incredible experience interacting with the faculty there, making really strong connections from the first day. I still talk to many of my professors. I graduated 20 years ago. I was on the alumni council. Hopkins was a huge part of my life and really provided me with the support that I needed to excel. So given that right fit, I became an exceptional student. I became a straight A student. I was one of the best students in my department in international relations. I got straight A's, I got A pluses. I discovered other books, I discovered other libraries, I took inspiration from my surroundings. I really, really felt that I was making a lot of progress, and I was. So then I found out about a program that Hopkins offers through its School of Advanced International Studies, which allows students who are in the undergraduate campus to take graduate courses in Bologna, Italy. Since I was a top international relations student, and I was assured by the dean of the IR department that I would get in, I walked into the interview thinking it was a done deal. I was very cocky. I thought that, this was just going to be a formality. And guess what happened? I was rejected to that program. Another huge blow, a very big ego boost. When I asked them, I said, I have a 3.9 GPA, it's almost perfect. I have all this experience. I have a great recommendation letter. And I said, why did you guys reject me? They said, well, I think we thought that you had too much of an abroad experience. That was the answer they gave me. I think the real answer was that I was very cocky and I took things for granted and I felt entitled to the acceptance and I wasn't really looking to work for it. So we turned sour grapes into a good situation, and instead of going to Bologna for the year at the School of Advanced International Studies, I actually went to the London School of Economics, which has the best international relations program in the world. So again, I took another deviated route from my originally planned route on my educational odyssey, and one that was very beneficial. In fact, one of my closest classmates from the LSE, someone who I studied with, was just elected mayor of Memphis, Tennessee, a major American city. It was pretty much the most rewarding educational experience I ever had. For the first time, I was meeting people from all over the world. It was truly diverse. There was a lot of independent study. And again, I continued forward on this path of growth. Fast forward a year later, I graduated from Hopkins. I graduated Phi Beta Kappa, which is only allotted to, even to be considered for the Honor Society, you have to be in the top 10% of your graduating class, so it's a huge achievement. And then my journey brought me to the University of Oxford. I kept following my passions for learning, my passions for history. I was a history student there. What better place to study history than in the oldest English-speaking language university in the world? Oxford had a very, very rich tradition, incredible libraries. I graduated from comic books to novels to now studying texts original texts in foreign languages. So that evolution continued. I was getting closer to my destination, but at this point, the destination was a journey in and of itself. I graduated from Oxford, then I went to work with my father. That was an education of a different kind, a practical education, one in business. We had Rohan talk about Thomas Edison. This was one of the projects we worked on, actually. This building was built in 1876, the Times building in Brockton, and it was actually wired by Thomas Edison himself with electricity. It was one of the first buildings in America to have electricity. That was very rewarding, and I decided that I was not quite done with school. So I said, you know what, since 6th grade, I wanted to go to Harvard. And I had told everybody that I was going to Harvard, and everyone had laughed at me from 6th grade onwards. So I said at this point, I really want to get one more master's degree. I had finished my first master's degree at 22. I was really young. I had accumulated a lot of experience. I felt like I had a lot to offer the university. I felt I also wanted to go back to the school because I had stopped learning, working with my dad. So I applied to Harvard again, and this time I was accepted. I was accepted, and from the very first day, because this was the culmination of years of hard work, desire, vision, and effort, I took advantage of every single experience that Harvard had to offer, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. Extracurricular activities, organizations, going to sporting events, cross-registering at other schools, just making the most out of my experience because I knew how hard I had worked to get there, and I knew that I was only going to be there for a limited amount of time, so that I had to make my mark. When I graduated from Harvard, I graduated top of my class. So I went from just a boy in Brockton, Massachusetts with big dreams, who was born to parents, neither of whom were educated. My dad never actually even went to high school, much less university, to finally going to Harvard, graduating top of my class. And now, whenever I go back, I can go to the library and find my name on the wall, where it will be forever because of the accolades that I've received there. So my journey as a student ended with graduation at Harvard. But then the journey continued with the students that I help, both in the UAE and abroad, who now need the same kind of guidance that I wish I had had when I was in high school. So this student, Derek, is actually from Abu Dhabi, and he's a student that I helped mentor who was accepted to Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, Princeton, and many other universities. So I've taken my experience, yes, so that's for him, by the way, not for me. God bless him, and it's so funny, he reminded me of myself because he came to me, and I have met, at this point, over 1,000 students. I've helped approximately 700, and I have a very good intuition for which ones truly are special and truly do stand out in more ways than just their transcript suggests. So anyways, Derek made a very positive impression on me from the outset, and he also was telling me about how he wants to go to liberal arts schools, and I said that's great, but I told him, I really believed in him that he could go anywhere he wanted to, and I told him that. And he says, I don't understand. What do you mean? I said, Derek, you can go anywhere you want. As long as you continue to work hard, as long as you're receptive to guidance and feedback, you can write your own ticket. And he did. This here is another student, Abdullah, who's also from Abu Dhabi, believe it or not, who I worked with for 4 years. Like me, I also very much connected with him. He, for over a decade, has made it his dream to go to Harvard. Abdullah was tasked, he was a government attorney until he recently resigned. He was tasked with creating the first environmental court in the MENA region. At 30 years old, he was liaising with former prime ministers. He was an advisor to the Minister of the Environment here. He had his whole life set out for him. But he really was determined to go to Harvard. He was relentless. We worked with him together for 3 years, and he had gotten into Columbia. He secured acceptance from Columbia, and that's a pretty good school. Most people are satisfied with Columbia, but he wasn't, and to be honest with you, I wasn't. So we worked together for 1 more year, and Abdullah is now at Harvard at the Kennedy School of Public Policy. He's running for president of the student body, and he's living his Harvard dream as well. At the end of the day, I just wanted to share with you some of the experience that helped me get here to where I am today. Like Odysseus, it's been a long journey, it's been a rewarding one, it's been a challenging one, but the key takeaways, the key learning lessons that worked for me, that I hope will work for some of the young students here who have the same ambitions, are like Odysseus to follow your calling. It might not be a specific university, it may be a specific field. You have to follow your heart. If you're not passionate about what you want to study, if you're not passionate about the work you're doing, you're never going to excel. You're never going to reach the very top. Go with the waves. What I mean by that is you're always going to have unforeseen developments when it comes to your journey, no matter what it is. How you react to those developments, those unforeseen circumstances, is going to be much more critical than than the circumstances themselves. You have to be flexible, you have to be adaptable, you have to be able to improvise. You have to be able to take what seems like a very negative experience and turn it into a positive one. That is something that will stay with you for the rest of your life and benefit you, and it's a very valuable lesson to learn. Never lose sight of your destination, always be goal-oriented and be driven. Even if you reach for the stars and only get to the moon, you still will have achieved much, much more than most people would have. And the last and most important one is always believe in yourself and never give up. I can't tell you, I told you I was called stupid by teachers. I'll never forget that. I was told I was crazy. I didn't have a chance. And now I'm not only what I've achieved through my own academic achievements, but what I've achieved through the hundreds of students I've been able to help. It's the most rewarding experience I could have ever asked for, and I'm living my dream today. Just with that, I just want to share a short video. It's a clip that I find very inspiring and very relevant. You always have to keep in mind how good is your best? What is your best? How motivated are you to succeed? The number one thing I see for most students is that the desire is there, the desire for excellence, the desire to reach the highest heights is there, but very few people are actually willing to put in the work. So you can't teach grit, you can't teach resilience, you can't teach work ethic. You have to have it in you. And maybe you have it in you and you just haven't unlocked that yet. Thank you very much.